Everyone. It is Thursday, February 16th, 2023. Welcome to Woodstock City Council. Tonight we got a lengthy meeting, so I'm going to cut right to it. This hybrid meeting is being held in person here in council chambers and electronically in accordance with section 238, subsection 3.3 of the Municipal Act, section 16.6.24 of the City of Woodstock Procedure Bylaw. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording will be posted on the city's website following the meeting. The meeting will also be broadcast on Rogers TV. The agenda of the meeting can be found on the agendas, meetings, and minutes page of the city's website, and all councillors are here tonight. And Councillor Wheaton will be reading the resolutions. Moving along to minutes, Councillor Wheaton. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, back up there. Any disclosures of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Matters arising from the minutes, now the minutes. I'm sorry.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Schattenberg, that the minutes of the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on February 2nd, 2023 be adopted.
Any questions on that? Call a vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Additions to the agenda. Councillor Wheaton.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wisger Van Meer that the following items be added to the agenda. Correspondence item 10.A, Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, regulation of graphic flyers delivered to residences. Delegation item 8.B, Aaron Hill, Thames Developments 6 Inc., OP 21-10-8, SB 21-05-8, and ZN 8-21-12 applications for official plan amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and zone change. Delegation item 8.C, Corby Kerwin, ZN 8-22-13, application for zone change 2653009, Ontario Inc.
Any questions, comments? I'm not sure. Am I working? There we go. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed. Presentations. Delegations. Judy Farlow, Woodstock Curling Center 2023 Mixed and Senior Mixed Provincial Championship event. Please come forward.
Good evening. Thank you. So Judy Farlow, I'm representing the Woodstock Curling Center, and I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you a bit about the center and about the event. We're proud and honored to host the Mixed Curling and Senior Mixed Curling Provincial Championship, April 12th to April 16th. And because I don't think we've had a representative from the Curling Center here in front of the new council, I'll give you just some highlights. I know you've got the slides ahead of time, so I'll hit the highlights and then we'll talk about the event and how I hope we can work together. The Curling Center is a vital member of the recreational community of the city of Woodstock, and we provide an opportunity for activity and a sense of belonging in the facility. Curling is a really unique sport in that it's the kind of sport that multi-generations, all ages and abilities can play together. We actually do have children, parents, and grandchildren curling on the same teams. We have experienced curlers curling with new curlers, and it's a really high energy, great place to be. We have targeted programs for different groups. Over 550 community members participate and engage with our facility throughout the season. And our very popular Learn to Curl program has sold out the last 2 seasons. So just through the fall, we had 70 community members learn to curl in 7 weeks. And we have 50% of those curlers who join a league and stay for longer. So we're pretty excited about the energy and the ability to share our passion for the sport. We are a not-for-profit, and our revenue stream comes from membership. So we were impacted by COVID, being shut down for a full season and a little bit of last season. We rely on grants and the line of credit and for our financial momentum. We've been the past recipients of the community grants, and we're grateful for that. And we will be completing our application by March 1st for the upcoming grant. And so we're always grateful for that kind of support so that we can continue to be a self-sufficient tax-paying recreational facility in the city. So that brings us to the event itself. It's the, as I said, the mixed curling and senior mixed curling provincial championships. Mixed curling is open age groups, 2 men, 2 women. And this event takes them, the winner of this event goes to a national championship. So it's very high level curling, and we're pleased to have the honor to host them. The senior part of the mixed curling just has this provincial event. So all curlers have to be over age 50. And this is their the winning for them. Our so there's 64 curlers plus their families and friends. Curl Ontario, the association we're part of, estimates that events of this size can bring up to $400,000 of economic value to the community. And that's through hotels and restaurants and taxis and shopping and things like that. There's daily live streaming of the games. We have 5 days worth of expenses running the facility, food, that kind of stuff. And we are reaching into the community, local businesses and partnerships to get some funding and sponsorship to help us out. And that leads us to why I'm here, to ask for some partnership. We already have our date in the mayor's calendar to be part of our opening ceremonies. We hope we can put a message in our program as well from the city of Woodstock. Specifically, I'd like to ask if we could have an ad in the upcoming What's on Woodstock edition at no cost to us, or that we can share some social media posts as well between us. In addition to that, we have various levels of financial sponsorship levels, ranging from $250 to $1,500. And that's in exchange for having your logo or the city represented in banners and again on our website and media, or behind the rinks where the live streaming happens, and we can feature our sponsors to a broader audience, or in any kind of partnership we can have with your marketing teams to figure out how we could work together. In 2016, we had a similar event, and there was a full page City of Woodstock ad in our program for that. So I know that there's several here who curl or have family members who curl, and we'd love to have you all come to our event, and we can share the game with you anytime you'd like to. So I'll open up to questions or any thoughts about how we might work together.
Thank you for that. Any questions of the delegation? Councillor Schattenberg.
Thanks, Sandy. Mayor, through to Judy. First of all, I guess the question would be, if there's 2 different divisions competing, how many teams altogether? Is it 8 plus 8, or is there more than that?
No, it's 8, 8, and 8 within each draw. So they have separate. So we have 4 sheets, and then twice a day, the different groups play 2 games a day. Does that make sense?
Is there local teams that have qualified, or is there an automatic buy for a local team?
That would be great if there was an automatic buy, but no, the local team, we had a local team go to last year's provincials in Belleville. They will be going to the qualifying the beginning of March, the first weekend in March. So the same team is pretty eager to make it back to the provincials, but they've looked at there's a lot of good teams, so they're not sure, but they're going to try.
Any Councillor Lauder.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Judy. If on the grants request, I should say, are you asking for monies to help out in this?
Yes, yeah, I wasn't sure if we could, but I did get that clarified that we can go through the grant, the community grant for funding for the event. So
Okay.
that's what we were going to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Judy? No? Well, thank you very much.
you.
I'm looking, thank you for your presentation, of course.
Okay.
Look forward to actually getting on the ice
Yes,
again one
yes.
day. And you
Yes,
teach me a little more, but
yes,
I will be there.
okay.
And I
good.
will send you a mayor's message.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Thank you
that.
for the time and the opportunity.
Now I am looking for a motion on the floor. Councillor Lauder.
I'll move that the presentation for the Woodstock Curling Center regarding the 2023 Mixed and Senior Mixed Provincial Championship event be referred to the mayor's office for promotional support.
And a seconder, Councillor Wheaton. Any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you very much. And next we have delegation 8B, Aaron Hill. Thames Development, Inc., OP 2110-8, SB 21058, and ZN 8-2112. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, my name is Aaron Hill. I represent Thames Developments for this particular application. It's a plan of subdivision application for lands north of the Pittock Reservoir, south of County Road 17. Obviously an application that's up for consideration and the planning approvals component of tonight's meeting. At our public meeting on Monday, we heard from council that additional density was certainly desirable for the multi-unit block that we have on the northwest corner of our plan. So subsequent to that meeting, we've gone back, reviewed it with our architect, and had some discussion with planning staff. And I think I know we are able to increase the density in that block to pretty close to the maximum allowable in the medium residential density designation that it resides in. So that's 70 units per hectare, and that'll translate to roughly 90 units on that particular block. 78 was the number that we applied for originally. That's going to require some minor adjustments to the zoning to accomplish that. And I understand that planning staff have authored a slightly modified recommendation that would allow that to be worked in as we work through the site plan there. And we're certainly in full support of that approach. So I'm available to answer questions, but that's really all I have. Thank you very much.
Any questions from council? Mr. Hill. Councillor Schadenberg.
I guess from the mayor through to Mr. Hill, I guess the first of all I'd like to say is thank you for, again, recognizing the connectivity of the trail system and whatnot that the Thames development, of course, further west, you've had the same sort of scenario to go parallel along the railway tracks to be able to continue connectivity from one subdivision to the next for both parks and stormwater management in that area. It does become a sensitive subject sometimes when you start talking about nature mixing with residential subdivisions, does it not, as far as trying to keep everything moving forward and being happy?
Through you, yes, definitely. For the most part on this plan, we have cordoned off the environmental areas and added buffers to them and left them untouched. But ultimately, you do want to deliver people to those spaces to experience them. So the Parks Department has a fairly thorough plan that we've been working with them for years, actually, about providing that connectivity through the back. And this particular property has some grading challenges, let's say. So that's taken a little bit to get all that to work, but it does. So yes, I absolutely agree with what you're saying.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you so much, and I do appreciate that. Of course, the infilling is what we're trying to get everywhere, so thank you. Yeah. Okay, looking for, actually, no, I'm not. I'm sorry. I gotta read first before I speak, right? Moving along, delegation 8C, Corby Kerwin, ZN 8-22-13. And online. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for your time tonight, Mr. Mayor. I'm here as well as with Nick Gagasev, our project architect, and Michael Barton, our project planner for this zone change application that we have before council tonight. And I'm going to turn it over to Nick to start to speak to some more of the specifics of the application.
You're on mute, Nick.
I was trying to share my screen, but apparently that's not possible. No, but basically, since the screen cannot be shared, so I will touch on the Monday's presentation and depiction of the planner, actually, how he described the development. I think it's great. What we tried to do, we tried to push the development to the city lines, to the street lines as possible, and provide enough cross ventilation on the site, enough distance as possible, great distance between the existing houses and the new development. New development originally was 8-story high, now it's only 6. The shadow studies were working for 8-story high building, and now obviously they're working a little better for 6-story high building. I think the development is very sensitive and taking in regards to the adjacent neighborhood. And the share screen that I had demonstrated the existing development versus the new existing houses versus the new development. Also, I want to touch on the comments of the councilors on Monday and to advise that landscape architect will be hired and there will be screening between the new development and existing housing, provided also fencing screening, and that's his expertise as landscape architect. And now I invite Michael to touch on the planning policies and how this development.
Thanks, Nate. Yes, I think the staff report that you have before you definitely has definitely done a good job of outlining the policies and the framework that this application has been considered in. So I'm here for any additional questions or commentary on that. But I agree with the planning rationale that's been set up in that report and the recommendation that's there. That is how this works within the OPA that has been adopted, and how this zoning change will work within that framework.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Any questions of the delegations? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Then moving along to consideration of planning reports. Looking for a motion on ZN 8-23-01 application for zone change Griffin Way Limited. Councillor Leatherborough.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the application for zone change for lands described as Block 2, Plan 41M-362, City of Woodstock, to amend the provisions of the Special General Industrial Zone M3-14 to facilitate an industrial warehouse with a reduced setback to the adjacent Environmental Protection 1 Zone EP1, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Looking for a seconder, Councillor Wismer Van Meer. And Mr. Gilbert. Councillor Planner.
Thank you. As noted, this zone change is a fairly simple matter. It will just recognize an oversight that wasn't caught when the original zoning was in place for the industrial subdivision. The reduced setback was vetted and recommended by the environmental impact study. So as such, staff recommend approval.
Any questions for the planner? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, carried. Next, 9BZN 8-2219 application for zone change, SBA Property Management, Inc. Looking for a motion, Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Moved by myself that Woodstock City Council approve the application for zone change for lands described as part lots 29, 32, 33, lots 27 and 28, Plan 86, part lot 11, 115C, Plan 293, City of Woodstock to rezone the subject property from Highway Commercial Zone C4 to Special Highway Commercial Zone C4-53 to include a machine shop as an additional permitted use on the subject property, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the discussion was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder, Councillor Tate.
Excuse me,
Council.
sorry to interrupt your meeting. I apologize. I'm not familiar with your protocols, with your zoning. Are we allowed to ask questions?
Not tonight. No, sorry, that was Monday night.
Okay, so this is only for,
The vote itself for discussion amongst council. Sorry.
thank you.
Yep. Looking for a seconder. Councillor Tate, sorry about that. The planner, thank you.
This zone change seeks to add a machine shop as additional permitted use. Staff note that the M4 zoning to the east and to the south already permits that use on the existing M4 zone properties. The machine shop use will be accommodated within the existing building. And a lot of the existing permitted uses in the C4 zone could have similar impacts to the machine shop. For these reasons, staff recommend the application be approved.
Thank you. Any questioning or questions of the planner? All right, seeing none, thank you. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. Thank you. 9C, B 22-83-8, application for consent, 2731824 Ontario Inc., looking for a mover. Counselor Wheaton.
That Woodstock City Council advised the Oxford County Land Division Committee that the city supports the application for consent of lands described as concession 1, parts lot 13 and 14, formerly Township of Blandford, and part 1 of 41R-9972 in the city of Woodstock to facilitate the creation of a new vacant lot, industrial lot, subject to the following conditions, conditions 1 through 4.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Lauder and the planner. Not even sure why you're sitting down right now. Thank you.
This is a new vacant industrial lot proposed to be created on Woodall Way. Staff are of the opinion that proposal is appropriate. The lots to be retained inside will be appropriately sized for industrial uses, and recommended conditions of approval are attached. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner? Okay, seeing none. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Moving along to 9D, B22.
Yeah, for 9D, sure, the Woodstock
Sure,
City
thank you.
Council advised the Land Division Committee that the city supports application file A 22-15-08 submitted by Donald Sutherland for lands described as part lot 48, plan 212, part of the abandoned railway, plan 293, city of Woodstock, and municipally known as 125 South Street, as it relates to relief from section 6.2, table 6.2, residential zone 1, provisions to reduce the minimum required lot frontage for the lot to be separate and retained from 12 meters to 10.3 meters to facilitate the severance proposed by consent application B 22-73-8. And further, that the city council advised the Land Division Committee that the city supports their proposal to sever the subject lands subject to the following conditions, and there was conditions 1 through 4.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder. Counselor Leatherborough. Thank you, planner.
Thank you. This is a infill lot to create a new residential lot. The lot is currently vacant. Once the lot is created, the applicant proposes to construct single attached dwellings on both the lot to be severed and retained. The minor variance is to permit a slightly reduced lot frontage. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed variance is appropriate, as will still be sufficient space for all required setbacks, and staff recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Gilbert? Counselor Schadenberg.
Guess a message or a question through the planner, the mayor. I noticed when driving past 125 South Street that there's already a foundation poured, I would think on the northern half of that land portion. Obviously on one half of the land, so there's certainly room to build a house beside that. Is that standardly permitted to be able to maybe start construction before something's approved that way?
Through Mr. Mayor, for this application, because it's still one lot and the R1 zone permits a house, the applicant can build the house, one house first, but they can't start the second house till the severance is complete.
We've had similar situations like that before, so I didn't know quite how to ask the question, but it was more of a clarification. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions from planning? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Thank you. 9E B 22-76-8, A 2216-8. Looking for a mover, Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. I'll move that Woodstock City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports application file A 22-16-08 submitted by 2749815 Ontario Limited, and further that the City Council advise the Land Division Committee that the city supports the proposal to sever the subject land subject to the following conditions 1 through 4.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder, Counselor Wheaton. Mr. Gilbert.
This is a zone change application to create vacant residential lot for semi-detached dwellings. Also being sought is relief of the lot frontage to reduce it from 9 meters to 8.5 meters. Staff of the opinion that the proposed relief is appropriate, and concerns or comments received from the agencies are included as conditions of approval, and staff recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions? Counselor Shanberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to, I guess, our planner. I'm not sure if the address was mentioned, but this were particular projects on Yeo Street. And I know the developer and builders in the room here tonight. I did want to compliment him on the work he had done recently on Bain Street with a multi-residential property. Any of these lower end, whether it doesn't matter if it's there for resale purposes or for rental properties, we certainly need more residential properties in the city of Woodstock of that size, and the square footage and whatnot. So certainly want to compliment the builder on this new plan, plus what he's previously done on Bain Street.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Carried. Moving along to 9F, ZN 8-22-13. Looking for a mover? Counselor Leatherborough, seconded by Counselor Lauder.
By myself that Woodstock City Council approved the zone change application, file number ZN 8-22-13, submitted by 2653009 Ontario Inc. for lands legally described as part lots 2 to 5, block 12, plan 34 in the city of Woodstock to rezone the lands from entrepreneurial zone C3 to special residential zone 4, R4, to facilitate the development of a 6-story, 50-unit apartment development on the lands. And further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert, sorry.
This is a zone change application to permit a 6-story apartment building with 50 residential units. As you're aware, Oxford County Council approved official plan amendment to permit that density and 6 stories and the 50 units as a site-specific policy. And this application is the same application that was previously considered by City Council in April of 2022. However, it was refused by the city. This application would seek to permit what was previously proposed. With respect to the actual zoning relief requested, the lot area, basically relief will implement the existing official plan permissions. The other relief of the lot rear yard depth, interior side yard width, exterior side yard width, landscape open space, and the parking area location and size, those all relate to the applicant's desire to push the building as far south as possible to provide greater separation to the residential properties to the north. The proposal does provide all the required parking. It's just the location of the parking is not in accordance with the zoning bylaw. And a couple of the spaces of the parking that's adjacent to the building are slightly narrower than what's permitted. So that is the relief that's being sought. Staff are of the opinion that in light of the official plan approval and the approved density, this zoning application will really just implement that and provide the best scenario for the existing permissions. As such, staff recommend approval.
Thank you, Counselor Wheaton.
Just a clarification through the chair to the planner on my notes that the official plan amendment was approved back in June of 2022 and it was not appealed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Counselor Shanberg.
I guess just a comment through to the mayor, maybe just a point of clarification more than anything else, because I do remember back to the previous term of council, when I was one of the three who voted at that point in time in favor of the six-story construction. And I think people just have to maybe realize at that point in time, the official plan stated that the most that could be built in that specific geographical area of the city of Woodstock was 4 stories. So it was the city of Woodstock and our current council at that time that was really battling as to whether or not we should permit something taller than 4 stories above our official plan at that point in time. And obviously it did go to the county, and the county approved the 6 stories. So I just wanted to clarify that it was in fact Oxford County Planning that came to us saying no to 6 stories. And we almost, but we didn't approve it at that time.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you very much. Want to just say thank you again to the delegation being willing to come tonight to answer any questions in case there was an issue. So thank you. Moving along to 9G, B 22-84-8, B 22-85-8, B 22-87.8, and ZN 8-22-16. Looking for a mover. Counselor Tate,
I'm going to make a motion to defer, and if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
second by Counselor Schadenberg. Counselor Tate,
The applicant is away, and I did speak to them, and they wanted deferral because they're going to redo the application because there was an issue with the extra lot, and so it's going to get redone, so it will fit into an application that will be approved by planning.
okay, then I don't know if you need to speak to that or not then.
The
It's
the
for
applicants
deferral.
did
Yeah.
provide a revised proposal eliminating the lot in the backyard. And they're looking to provide some parking with that lot and assign 1 or 2 parking spaces to each of the units. So we just received that proposal yesterday at 4 o'clock, so we need to circulate it to city and county staff and the public to provide some comments. So we intend to bring it back at a future date.
Excellent. I'm actually quite happy to hear that. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you so much. Moving along to 9H, SB 10-08-8 and ZN 8-10-17, looking for a mover. Counselor Wheaton,
We're on H. That Woodstock City Council approve in principle the zone change application file number ZN 8-10-17 submitted by 1212949 Ontario Inc. for lands described as part lot 13, concession 2 Blandford, now in the city of Woodstock, to rezone the land from future development zone FD to special prestige industrial zone M1 special and passive use open space zone OS1 to facilitate a proposed draft plan of subdivision for industrial purposes. And further, that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter. And further, the council of the city of Woodstock advised county council that the city supports the application for draft plan of subdivision file number SB 10-8-8 submitted by 1212949 Ontario Inc. for lands described as part lot 13, concession 2 Blandford, now in the city of Woodstock, subject to the following conditions of draft approval. Conditions 1 through 53, which I will not read.
please take a breath and thank you. Well done again. Seconder on that, Counselor Wismer Van Meer. Mr. Gilbert.
This is an industrial plan of subdivision that began back in 2010. It contains 3 blocks for industrial park, business park development, numerous blocks for stormwater management, a future sanitary pumping station block, and a block for the extension of Springbank Avenue, together with road widening blocks. The proposed zone change proposes to rezone the property to an M1 zone with some special additional uses. Staff are of the opinion that some of these uses could be inappropriate if they're established on their own. So we recommend that a holding provision be implemented just to ensure that a principal industrial use is established first, and then the accessory use can come after. The property also contains municipal drain on the property. The applicant has worked with city staff and county staff to design the plan appropriately, and the existing natural features that were identified through the secondary plan from 2008 are appropriately implemented through this plan, and staff recommend approval subject to the noted conditions.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. 9I, OP 21-10-8, SB 21-05-8, and ZN 8-21-12. Looking for a motion? Counselor Wheaton.
Have my voice warmed up, I might as well continue. That Woodstock City Council support the application to amend the county official plan file number OP 21-10-8 submitted by Thames Developments 6 Inc. for lands legally described as Part Lot 5, Concession 15, East Sora in the city of Woodstock to redesignate the subject lands from future urban growth to low and medium density residential and open space to facilitate the development of the subject lands for residential development. And further, that city council approve in principle the zone change application file number ZN 8-21-16 submitted by Thames Development 6 Inc. for lands legally described as Part Lot 5, Concession 15, East Zora in the city of Woodstock to rezone the lands from future development zone FD to special residential zone 1, R123, special residential zone 2, R2-34, special residential 3, R3-SP, special residential zone 3, R3-12, activity use open space zone, OS2, special activity use open space zone, OS2-SP, to facilitate the proposed draft plan of subdivision, and further that any comments received from the public were reviewed and considered before the decision was made in relation to this planning matter. And further that the city council advised county council that the city supports the application for draft plan of subdivision file number FB 21-05-8 submitted by Thames Development 6 Inc. for lands legally described as Part Lot 5, Concession 15, East Sora in the city of Woodstock, subject to the following conditions of draft approval, conditions 1 through 53.
Thank you. Second by Counselor Leatherborough. Mr. Gilbert.
This is another series of applications for residential development on the south side of Oxford Road 17. The draft plan subdivision includes 125 lots, single attached dwellings, 256 townhouse units, and a multi-unit block. The application included a number of supporting studies, including traffic impact studies, environmental impact studies, functional servicing reports, and the recommendations of all those studies are included as conditions of draft approval. The applicant has since Monday night has modified the multi-unit block to allow for some increased density. As a result of that, there's a couple additional zoning relief that's required. One is to reduce the minimum lot area from 150 square meters to 140 square meters, increase the building height for an apartment building from 3 stories to 4 stories, and to reduce the required parking from 1.5 unit to 1.25 unit per unit. Staff of the opinion that the requested zoning is appropriate. The rest of the subdivision zoning is a carry forward from the previous phases of Thames developments, with the exception of new provisions for reduced setback to the rental protection 1 zone, which was supported by the applicant's environmental impact studies, as well as providing opportunities for additional residential units in the R1 and R2 zone properties. Staff with the opinion that the proposed conditions of approval will satisfy comments received through the agency process, and the development appropriately implements the secondary plan that was prepared in 2008. For those reasons, staff recommend approval.
Thank you. I believe I need to. No, I got a seconder on that one. All right. Any questions of the planner? Counselor Lauder.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Mr. Gilbert. Could you just tell me what the R3SP, what difference does the SP make in having that on there?
To you, Mr. Mayor, the R3 special zone provides for reduced lot areas for townhouses. I believe reduced lot frontages, and also provides some reduced exteriors or interior side widths for end units. So basically, it just carries forward what was already there in previous phases. But we need to add another provision to provide for the reduced setback to the environmental protection 1 zone. So it's the same as what was previously approved with the addition of the reduced setback to the environmental zone.
Counselor Tate?
Yeah, just through to the planner. So we have issues in the development that's already over there because the setbacks are so close to the road, so there's no parking for cars. So I had a concern with it, so I had gone to this city CAO and we did a measure of the width of the streets, and they are to the provincial policy. So are these streets the same width as what we currently have over in that subdivision? Or are they wider?
So, Mr. Mayor, they're 20-meter right-of-way widths. So I believe it's the same.
Well, my concern is if you drive over there right now, you cannot get up and down the streets. Like I have a pickup truck and it's very difficult because the cars have to park because the setback is so short, and now we're making a motion to even make it shorter. So people living there have nowhere to park. The fire vehicles, there's absolutely no way they can get up and down those streets. So I am not going to support this extra RS, the zone that we put on this. I was fine with the application the way it was, but adding these intense density, I don't think people understand what happens. And there will be problems because there's not enough parking and the street isn't wide enough. And the setback of the homes does not give a laneway long enough to have more than 1 car. And everybody knows there's at least 2 cars per household. So I'm concerned about that, and I will not be supporting this the way it's written. Thanks.
Counselor Lauder?
Thank you. I also will not be supporting this. I feel with higher density, we already have issues with, as we're saying, the parking, and now with the single family dwellings, the R1s and R2s, they can have additional ARUs in them. And so that's just adding to the whole density. We talked about it the other night with traffic and the traffic coming from, that'll be on Pittock Road, and traffic that will be on County Road 17. And so I just can't support this. I was fine with the way it was, so I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Counselor Leatherborough?
Through your chair to the planner, just to confirm, there is access to public transit out there, correct? For residents?
I'll have to defer to CEO. I'm not
Okay, sorry.
familiar with the transit, that area.
Your worship, through to Councillor Leatherbarrow, there is public transit on the north shore of Pittock. It obviously doesn't extend down this far yet, no.
So if I may, so I think I'll be supporting this because we have a shortage of houses, and I think that we need to intensify as much as we can, and we're, I think, quite literally running out of land. So, and for future environment purposes, I would hope that we're always encouraging less motor vehicles and more public transportation.
Any other questions? Well, I do have, oh, Counselor Tate?
I don't have a question, just when he was done, I was just going to make a comment that we need to remember we don't live in Toronto, we live in Woodstock. So we are going, if we're going to intensify, you have to remember that this is going to be a strain on every single institution we have in here. There's not enough already with our healthcare system in Woodstock. There's not enough with the roads. Our roads have not been urbanized out on County Road 17. We get complaints every day about the traffic. And if you live on that road right now, I was told the other day, you have to pull over almost every day because of the way the traffic is operating. I realize there's a shortage of housing across Canada, but this is Woodstock. So let's remember we're in Woodstock and we're not in a great big location like Toronto. And I would like to have our services so we can maintain them with the tax base we have. And remember that residential does not pay its way. So I had somebody ask me today, well, why you've got all this residential building, why aren't my taxes going down? Because residential does not pay. It only pays for what goes in right away. So you have a bigger draw on your fire, your police, your health, your city staff, the maintenance of the roads. And we need to keep that in mind. And yes, it would be great if everybody takes the bus, but they don't. And we cannot tell people they can't have 2 cars at a house. And if you go over and drive there, the fire trucks cannot get down the street. Thanks.
Anyone else? Counselor Schattenberg.
I guess from the mayor through to engineering, and I know Dan Locke is here tonight. Maybe he want to comment in on the situation about road widths, not necessarily for fire trucks, but certainly for garbage removal and recycling vehicles and snow plows and everybody else that has to try to make their way down some of these current narrow streets. I think of Huntingford Trail being one on that side of Piddock, but also Passchendaele and Kane on the south side of Piddock being streets where there's a lot of townhouses and not a lot of place to park cars.
Thank you. Through your worship to the councilor's question. We always try to maximize what we can get on a street, and that's part of the problem for my area especially. You look at a lot of the narrow streets that are legacies in a lot of cities. We're not unlike other cities, and we end up with a lot of curb face areas where there's no snow storage. There's competing priorities for that space at the edge of the road. So any roads that we can have wider and be able to put more services out like parking and that it helps. So anything that we can do to maximize those amenities there at the road would be helpful for my services.
Thank you. Counselor Wheaton.
Through you to Counselor Tate. Counselor Tate, would you be open to making an amendment, or would you like me to amend the motion to remove the special zoning? What's your preference?
Can I ask a question first before we do that of the planner? Can you explain special residential zone 3, R3 special to us? What exactly that means and if that itself changes the road width or not? I'm not sure it does.
That wouldn't change the road width. That just implements or facilitates the additional density in that one block at the northwest corner.
Okay, so that
So
brings me
it's-
to my next question then. What we're talking about here is just the one block of the high density. We're going from, correct me if I'm wrong, 78 to 90 was the
Correct.
plan here?
And the relief that's required is reduce the lot area from 150 square meters to 140 square meters per unit. Increase the building height from 3 to 4 stories and reduce the parking for the apartment units from 1.5 spaces per unit to 1.25.
Okay. So is that still your concern with that?
Well, my
Counselor
concern,
Tate?
my
Yeah.
concern is going forward that this is going to keep going. So we already have an issue in that area. So I was fine with the original plan, but if we're going to keep doing this to every application that comes forward, we're going to have an issue. So it's just not going to work. But it's going to pass anyway. So I'm just saying, I'm not going to support it. If you're fine with it, the rest of the council's fine with it, just I'm not going to support it.
Counselor Leathermore.
Just have one question for the unexperienced over here in terms of process, but aren't these questions kind of part of the planning process on Monday, your worship?
Not necessarily, but that is always where I recommend we get most of these questions out. Is the Monday
Point of
night planning.
order, the
Yes.
planning meeting is not a council meeting. So I will remind everybody, normally you don't sit in your seat. It is a meeting for the public. So if I have a question, I will ask at a council meeting because that's where the questions are asked. Planning is not a council meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to my question to you earlier. So the intensification on the one block, we're going from 78 to
90.
90 units is the only difference of this SP.
That's the R3 special. Yeah, the SP, R3 SP, that's the additional units from 78 to 90.
Okay, and I would just say I thank the planner for coming back, or the planning for, or the developer, I'm sorry, for coming back to this. I still think we have to intensify wherever we can. We do need more homes. So thank them again for coming. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
So is this, sorry, is this for the change?
As,
I'm
no,
confused.
as read right now.
As read.
1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? A motion is carried as read. Thank you very much. 4-3. Moving along to 9J. OP 21-18-8, SB 21-13-8, and SB 21-14-8, ZN 821-21, and ZN 821-22. May I have a motion on the floor? Counselor Leatherborough,
That Woodstock City Council defer OP 21-18-8, SB 21-13-8, and SB 21-14-8. ZN 8-21-21 and ZN 8-21-22 applications for official plan amendment, draft plans of subdivision and zone change in order to receive comments from the City of Woodstock Parks Department regarding any necessary modifications.
thank you. Can I have a seconder to that? Counselor Lauder? Mr. Gilbert?
Thank you. So since Monday, planning staff is working with the applicant and the proponent of the gravel pit to the south to try to address some of their concerns. And then we've also become aware of concerns from the City Parks Department. So the applicant's willing to work with the City Parks Department. So they've asked for a short deferral to let them have those discussions and make sure that they understand the scope of the changes that may be required to the plan. So we hope to bring it back in the near future.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. We'll go to considerations of correspondence. 10A, Abortion Rights Coalition of Canada, regulation of graphic flyers delivered to residents. I have a motion. Oh, sorry, I don't need one. Again, I got to continue reading. Staff presentations. Mr. Creary.
That's better. It looked fine down here. Okay. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I apologize for my voice. On behalf of your administration, Mrs. Campbell and I are pleased to present a high-level overview of the draft 2023 revenue fund budget this evening. So tonight begins a one-month deliberation period that includes two special budget council meetings next week. On Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m., council will review the budget proposals from the majority of the departments, and they will review these in much greater detail than we will this evening. On March 2nd, City Council will review the budgets that are coming from its public boards, meaning the Woodstock Police Services Board, the Woodstock Public Library Board, and the Woodstock Art Gallery Advisory Committee. Final approval of the budget is scheduled for the March 16th council meetings. All meetings are open to the public, but they will also be live streamed for those who wish to watch from elsewhere. The budget itself will be posted on the city website as well. So the city adopts a budget in accordance with the Municipal Act. Our fiscal year is the calendar year. Our budget is balanced, with the majority of expenditures being funded from the tax levy. Now, in discussing the budget, we tend to use a lot of terminology, and so we're just going to spend a few moments right now to talk about some of what our terminology means. And first of all, it is base budget. So what we mean by base budget is city staff present council with a base budget, which represents the estimated costs to deliver the same services and programs as provided in the prior year. Any costs to improve a higher level of service, to provide a new service for a new initiative, or any staffing and equipment cost increases resulting from population or geographic area growth are represented separately as recommended additions to base budget. And this same approach is used by the Woodstock Public Library Board and the Art Gallery Advisory Board. Now, the one exception is the Woodstock Police Services budget, and the budget proposal that you see from Woodstock Police Services is an all-in budget. So it includes their base plus any of the recommended additions as approved by the Police Services Board. Next is the tax levy. So the tax levy in the context of the city budget represents the net amount to be raised from property taxes to fund the city's operating and debt service costs. This amount covers total expenditures less any other source of revenue. Revenues such as user fees, grants, and other various sources. The levy is determined by council based on budget deliberations each year. But there is a total tax levy that includes the levy from the city for city purposes, from the county for county purposes, and from the province for education purposes. Next, we'll talk about tax rates. So tax rates is a simple mathematical calculation that is derived by taking the levy as approved, the tax levy is approved by City Council, and dividing that into the total property assessment in the city as determined by MPAC. So it's a simple mathematical calculation until you introduce these complicating factors, otherwise known as tax ratios, tax policies. We'll talk about those in a minute. Assessments. So when we talk about assessments, the city receives the assessment roll at the end of each prior year for use in the following year. MPAC provides that to us. Now, tax ratios are approved annually by County Council. Tax policy is a jurisdictional authority of County Council. Tax ratios are used to weight assessed values by property class, and that determines the allocation of the tax levy to each of those tax classes. And then finally, there are tax policies that are also approved annually by County Council. The example is the tax rate discount on vacant and excess commercial and industrial land. So moving into the actual 2023 budget, total expenditures, about 112 million. It represents an increase of 18.7 million or 20% increase over 2022, but there is one big factor that is driving that large increase. And it is coming from our economic development department, who are forecasting a significant increase in industrial land sales because they're expecting to be able to market the land in Petula Ridge Phase 3 this year. So there's $16 million additional land sales in the budget for this year over last year. And because all of the revenue that we derive from industrial land sales is just automatically contributed back into the industrial land reserve, this number makes its way into an expenditure figure. And so 16+ million of the 18.7 million actually equates to an increase in industrial land sales, which is a positive thing. So the difference is about 2.7 million, and that represents the real increase in gross expenditures year over year. And that's only about 2.9%. But now moving on to the important numbers, the tax levy. So the 2023 base budget levy is $68,377,000. It represents a $3.7 million increase from 2022, which is approximately 5.76% increase. So the top 3 departments or service areas with the highest year-over-year dollar value increase are as follows: Woodstock Police Services with a $1.9 million year-over-year increase, which represents just over half of the total increase. It represents a 10.98% increase over their 2022 budget. Second is the Woodstock Fire Department at $889,000 increase over 2022. Now remember that Woodstock Police is an all-in number. It is not a base budget number. But the Woodstock Fire Department and the rest of the city departments are all base budget numbers. So at $889,000 increase from the Woodstock Fire Department, that represents base budget. There are additional recommended additions to base budget that would increase that figure if council were to approve those. Third is public transit, and the lion's share of this increase is conventional transit as opposed to Thank you. Thank you. That's better. Conventional transit as opposed to paratransit. A big factor driving the increase in public transit is, quite frankly, equipment costs. And we'll go into much more detail at the 2 special budget meetings next week, where council will review this all line by line. So when you look at the tax levy increases over the past number of years, you can see at 3.7 million, it does represent the highest. And it's important to note that all of the prior years represent the total tax levy, which would be representative of the base budget plus any additions to the base budget that had been approved by council. When you're looking at the 2023 figure of 3.7 million, it largely represents base budget. So your department heads have proposed a variety of additions to base budget. I'm just going to skim over the surface of those this evening. Each department head will dive more deeply in an explanation of these for council during the special budget meetings next week. So first of all, there are always a number of financial sustainability reserve contribution recommendations. The first is an annual one, and it's an increase in the asphalt resurfacing reserve. We have a goal of reaching annual sustainable funding of $2 million for asphalt resurfacing. We have 3 more increments of $200,000 that are still needed to achieve that goal. Secondly, there is a post-secondary capital grant to build a reserve fund to support an investment to support introduction of additional post-secondary educational institutions. This comes out of our strategic plan. It was a recommendation. We've included in a number of budgets, but again, we're finding it difficult to recommend to council at this point, given the amount of other additions to base budget. So we're recommending deferral of that into next year. The Emergency Services Radio Communication Reserve requires an increase to maintain financial sustainability for the next replacement cycle of this system. And we're recommending an increase in the Education and Training Reserve Fund, which is the annual funding to support training for our employees. Moving into the staffing areas of the additions to base budget. In engineering, we have the recommended conversion of one part-time transit custodian to full-time. Parks and Recreation is recommending the introduction of a new supervisor of forestry position. This would be a new full-time employee. Parks and Rec is also recommending a seasonal full-time temporary skilled labor and 2 summer student park laborers. Temporary skilled laborer means a 9-month posting. The summer students would be just for the duration of the summer months. And this is to respond to a growing inventory of public land to maintain. In Parks and Recreation, we're also recommending the introduction of a temporary assistant supervisor to support special events. And again, this would be for that 9-month period of intensive special events that occurs throughout the year. Human Resources is recommending a human resources coordinator, which would be another new full-time employee. Administrative Services is recommending the co-op summer student be added. Woodstock Art Gallery is requesting additional part-time front desk attendant. This has some connections to the CAO Department Marketing and Communications Coordinator. So maybe we'll talk about those together first. The CAO Marketing and Communications Coordinator is not a new full-time employee. It is an internal transfer of a dedicated marketing and communications resource that resides currently within the museum and the art gallery. So it proposes to transfer that resource to the CAO's department to work with marketing and communications corporately. She would continue to support the gallery and the museum in that capacity, albeit as a corporate resource. So what one of the effects of this is that it reduces the available time that was to support front desk attendance. And so there is additional hours that are needed to provide coverage at the front desk at the gallery. The Woodstock Art Gallery is also proposing a casual art installation technician. This is actually a cost savings ultimately proposal. It's using someone locally to assist with the art installation turnovers as opposed to contracting from a Toronto firm. And the Woodstock Fire Department is recommending 4 additional fire suppression staff. You'll hear more about that in a report later this evening. A couple of miscellaneous items: Engineering Department, parking enforcement reassignment. Staff had wanted to come forward with a proposal for additional bylaw enforcement staff, additional parking enforcement staff, but given the amount of additions to base budget, given the significance of the base budget levy increase, we found it difficult and went looking for ways to try and be more efficient with the resources that we currently have. The downtown security contract, we currently have 2 security guards working downtown during the daytime. When we hired that contract last year, it was a requirement of the security company that a minimum of 2 security guards be on shift at any time in the downtown. We could not divide them. There was concern about the confrontational nature of the job. But those concerns didn't really materialize in the last year. And so we've gone to the company that provides us with our security guards, and there is agreement that we can divide them going forward. And so this is actually a proposal to deploy one of the 2 to the broader city to undertake more parking enforcement. And to the concerns that were raised earlier tonight with respect to the parking and the The street being filled with parking, particularly in the new subdivisions, and the difficulties of getting emergency service vehicles down those roads. A solution to that is additional parking enforcement, parking restrictions, proactive parking enforcement, so that we're not experiencing that kind of congestion within those streets. The engineering department is proposing an asset management building condition assessment, which is an ongoing program. And this would provide better information to inform the non-core asset management plan that is to be developed in 2024. It will help us with respect to our capital budget in terms of determining when we need to schedule roof replacements, when we need to schedule window replacements, building improvements, building maintenance. And fire department, lastly, is recommending contracted services to undertake business continuity planning. And that brings to a close the recommended additions. So the total cost of those is $908,000. There's a capital reserve of $46,000 financing, and development charges fire $15,600. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Mrs. Campbell, whose voice is much better than mine.
So thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. Tonight, I'm going to be covering some of the general sections associated with the budget and providing some information on assessment and taxation. So the first slide, which is actually in your package, is on page 35. Okay. On page 35, I know they're hard to read up there when they're such fine print. We include it each year, and it illustrates the allocation of the proposed levy by function. As always, the biggest piece of the pie at 43.7% comes in with the police and fire services, which is up about 1.25% over the prior year. The remainder of the levy, 56.3%, funds the balance of all the other services that the city provides, including about 15% roadways and storm sewers, 11.5% on general government, which supports the services and programs provided by the city, includes departments such as admin services and HR. About 10% on parks and rec, and the remaining 20% funds capital out of revenue, transit, library and cultural services, and planning and development. Breakdown is fairly consistent with 2022, with the exception of the increase in the protective services, which is offset this year by a reduction in the general government expenditures. The next slide on page 36 in your book provides a breakdown of revenue sources for 2023. This is how we pay for the expenditures in the revenue budget. The largest piece is always the taxation, although the percentage this year has decreased considerably to 62% as compared to 74% in 2022. And that tax revenue percentage reduction is just the fluctuation from year to year. And this year, it's, as Mr. Curry mentioned, because of the large increase in the industrial land sales. So industrial land sales is up and the taxation percentage is down. The balance of that pie also is virtually unchanged from 2022. The next slide is on page 37. And that slide is simply indicating that there is some overall assessment growth in 2023. There is a slight difference in the taxable assessment growth as compared to the total assessment growth, which came in at 2.61% over 2022. And that includes all of the properties within the city. With the continued delay in the province-wide reassessment, most of our taxpayers will find that once again, their assessment's not going to change, and it should be the same as the last 3 years. The only time an assessment should be changing in 2023 would be the result of a change in the property, such as a renovation, a new build, or a successful appeal of a previous year's assessment. For consistency purposes, we do continue to calculate an average house assessment based on the 2023 roll.
And we use a single detached dwelling, and we recognize that this average cost is no longer reflective of the current real estate market. And this average cost also increases, which is what is not happening with a typical assessment. In 2023, the mathematical average of all single detached dwellings was $246,540, and that's up about $3,100 from 2022. As I said, it's strictly a mathematical equation. We take all of the properties in one assessment code and divide by the number of properties that there are to get the number. I would like council to keep in mind throughout this presentation and the budget deliberations that the majority of residential taxpayers are not going to see a change in their assessments. So their tax increase in the end will be limited to the change in the tax rate. With respect to the tax impact on the average home, using base budget, the tax rate increase is 2.95%. This translates to an increase of $109.49 or 4.18% for a house valued at that average cost of $264,540. We include the recommended additions to base. The tax rate increases by 4.32% and a corresponding tax increase of $145.72 or 5.57% as compared to 2022. Assuming that there are no changes to the base budget, most taxpayers will see their taxes increase by the 2.95%. My final slide is just with respect to the 2022 surplus. Currently, as it's showing in the budget as printed, it's approximately $3.3 million. It's still a preliminary number. We're not finished our 2022 year end, and there will still be adjustments being made. The 2022 year-to-date number also still includes the surpluses that have been generated by the library and also the Police Services Board, and those surpluses will be allocated to their respective boards before the 2022 year end is complete, which will end up reducing the surplus by approximately $480,000 down to the $2.8 million shown. We'll be bringing recommendations forward on the final 2022 surplus at a coming council meeting in a separate report, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, probably in the next month. So that concludes my portion of the 2023 budget presentation for this evening, and we'll be going into much greater detail next week at the meetings on Tuesday and Thursday.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Recognizing we will be going over this in much more detail, but any questions for either one of them tonight? Councillor Wheaton.
Just a really quick question through the chair. I did a rough calculation when you covered.
Your microphone's not on, sorry.
It is.
Oh, sorry, it was covered.
When you were speaking of full-time equivalents, I did just some rough calculations. Is that approximately 10 or 12 new positions proposed in this budget? That's okay. We can, let's talk about it at the next meeting. And then my question at that time will also be, what is that in relation to the overall number? So I can wait for that number. That's just something that's on my mind.
Thank you. Any other questions for this evening? Okay, thank you very much. No resolution is required. A special revenue budget meetings will be held next week, 5 p.m., February 21st and 23rd. And always, well, normally we always have lots of seats available, so I encourage you to come out and watch. Next is 11B, Colleen Collins, our manager, marketing communications. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm here tonight to share with you the results of the recent consultation for the reinstatement of the benches at Museum Square and throughout the downtown. There was significant interest in this topic, and so we wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity, or provided the opportunity for members of the public to provide their input on this matter and to share their thoughts. So recognizing that, we looked to the International Association of Public Participation and the best practices that they recommend for designing the engagement activity and approach, to develop the questions and to guide how we report back to members of council with the results of this feedback. So we landed on an online survey to collect the input, and that was open to the public from January 10th to 31st. We also made hard copies available to those who requested them, and we understand that there was community agencies that were making available their equipment to help those who maybe didn't have access to computers or devices, or who maybe weren't as comfortable with technology. We got the word out about the survey through the city's online channels, including social media and our website. We advertised the survey in What's on Woodstock. We had posters that we made available and circulated to our stakeholder groups and had posted through the downtown. We had a extensive mailing list that we emailed links to the survey, and also there was coverage in local media to promote the survey and make the opportunity available. So in total, we received just over 1,500 survey responses, and additionally received letters from 10 stakeholder groups who wanted to provide their input for council's consideration. So we started by asking people what their interest was in the project. This was a case where people had the option to select all that applied, because they may fall into more than one group. And so just based on the viewing on the screen, I'll read out these numbers, but the information is all in the package, of course. So for downtown property owners, we received 47 responses. Downtown business owners was 52 responses. People who identified working in the downtown was 251. Living in the downtown was 107. People who lived in Woodstock but not in the downtown was 1,122. People who regularly shop and dine downtown was 732, and people who indicated that they work with community organizations that support vulnerable populations was 132. And so some of the identified community organizations who were represented in the survey responses are found on the screen here. Again, the complete list of submissions is included in the council agenda this evening. So then we asked people in the last 12 months how often they came downtown. And so you can see by the results on the screen that more than 86% were downtown at least once or twice a month, with more than half coming downtown 1 to 3 times or more a week. We also wanted to understand from people if they've directly been involved with or impacted by any negative or undesirable behavior in the downtown Woodstock, and that was based on the opinions and feedback that we were receiving initially. And so that was a pretty even split, with just over half of the population or of the respondents indicating that they had. And of course, we wanted to understand the nature of those experiences and give people a chance to have their voice heard. Now, I will note one error on the screen from what was in the package, that there's 736 people who responded to this, because of course, those who indicated that they had not had a negative interaction may not have chosen to respond to this part of the question. So the primary themes that came out of the way that people described the experiences were negative interactions with individuals, being asked for money, being yelled at, people witnessing people using drugs or finding drug paraphernalia, observable instances of garbage or litter in the street, and just a general sense of feeling afraid or uncomfortable when they were downtown. And I thought it was important to note also that there was a number of people who responded to this question who expressed empathy for those vulnerable populations. And some people indicated that they were negatively impacted by not having benches to be able, that limited their ability to come downtown. So then we asked people to identify how much they agree or disagree with a few statements. And so one of the questions that we asked, or the statements, was if people feel safe coming downtown, recognizing that there are quantifiable metrics that can be used to determine safety. But what we wanted to understand from people is their feelings of safety. And that's, of course, based on everyone's individual experiences and circumstances. And so about 38% of respondents said, yes, they feel safe. 40% said no, they do not. Either they disagree or strongly disagree with the statement. And further 21% could neither agree or disagree with the statement. And because it often with these types of questions, it might not be a yes or no answer. And so we wanted to give people the option to provide context. And so we had 392 people who provided some additional context to that. Some people noted that while they feel safe during the day, they may not feel safe at night, or that their gender may influence their perceptions and feelings of safety. There was comments that people feel the downtown feels safer since the benches were removed, and others indicated that they actually feel less safe. And a few comments just generally about the infrastructure not feeling very safe or welcoming in the core. There was also comments requesting further patrols to help people feel safer, but also some comments indicated that the police presence made some people feel less comfortable and less safe. So the next statement was, if benches or other seating options make it easier and safer for people to come downtown. 73% of respondents either agreed or strongly agreed with this perspective. And again, looking at the feedback, there was 384 comments on this, and there was really two strong themes that came out of responses here. A lot of people took the opportunity to provide examples of or reasons why the benches made it safer for them to come downtown. And the other strong theme was around that while people agree that benches do make it easier or safer for people to come downtown, that they don't think that people will use them when they're being used by people who are experiencing homelessness or using drugs. And again, we saw comments here expressing empathy for people who are experiencing homelessness, and that benches are for everybody and not just those who people deem appropriate. The next statement was around whether or not the increase in patrols and additional actions, like the extended hours for the shelter, had a positive impact on people's perceptions of the downtown. And so, of course, this was quite evenly split across. Some of the feedback that we got here was that a lot of people had commented that they didn't really notice any increased patrols or that there wasn't an improvement as a result of them. However, there was also people who commented that they did feel safer and that there has been a positive change. There was quite a lot of comments in the results saying that while the patrols were one thing, that they'd also like to see more community outreach and support for social services, not just increased police patrols. And again, some people noted that there was the disbursement of people experiencing homelessness was now spread throughout the city. The last question that we asked people's agreement or how much they agreed with was if there needs to be more effort put towards addressing and identifying issues or solutions for homelessness. And here was a pretty overwhelming consensus that that there was, of course, a need for greater effort in this area. And a lot of that, again, spoke to the mental health and addictions or substance abuse support. Many commented on the need for increased shelter or affordable housing options. A lot of people recognize that while this isn't directly a lower tier responsibility, that we needed to be part of the solution, and that there's a lot of great community organizations doing work in this space, along with other levels of government, and that it needed to be a coordinated approach. And there was a few comments around people saying that people need to want to have help, so that if we're providing these services and outreach, that if people aren't looking for that support, that it might not have any benefit, and some increased strength in the enforcement. So we wanted to give people an option to, or an opportunity to provide in their own words, things that would make it easier or more enjoyable for them to come downtown. Generally, what people were looking for is a downtown that feels safe and feels clean. And then a lot of people offered suggestions on how to do that. Examples cited were increased patrols and fewer empty or untidy storefronts. People also suggested additional facilities like public washrooms, more bike racks, improved lighting, and an increased number of waste containers were additional amenities that they would be looking for. There was quite a few comments about the methadone clinic and having it moved out of the downtown or off of Dundas. And some suggestions for more events like Street Fest, activities like skating or mini golf, and amenities like parks or playgrounds and splash pads. So then, because not everyone has, it's not maybe not easy for everyone to identify some options, we wanted to give people some consistent, and this gives us some measurable metrics as well about some of the things that would encourage them to come downtown. So again, looking at more community events, increased stores and interesting and unique shops and restaurants that were things that people wanted to see, with infrastructure improvements falling just behind that. So then, of course, the motion on the floor was around the benches. And so we needed to ask people if they support reinstating the benches. Almost 25% do not support reinstating benches at this time. And the remaining 75% of respondents either support reinstatement immediately at some time in the future when the snow removal operations are done, or we gave people the option too, if there was maybe considerations that needed to be achieved, or actions that needed to be implemented for them to support that. And some of the things that people identified in response to that were seeing further increased security patrols. There was a lot of comments around the physical changes to the course, both to the benches and other aspects of it, things like the style, the location of the benches, the number of the benches, having security cameras and improved lighting were some of the things that people had mentioned. Again, there was a lot of comments on the style of benches, with a lot of people asking for or suggesting benches that made it difficult for people to lie down. But on the flip side, there was also people who were advocating against anti-homelessness benches, or what they called hostile infrastructure that kind of restricts that. And again, there was a request for increased supports for people experiencing homelessness, more outreach, places for them to go that are safe, and information and resources that could be made available for them. And then finally, we just wanted to give people an opportunity to share anything further that they would have wanted to share with council to help them make their decision, your decision about this topic. And again, generally, it appears that people recognize that the benches are not the actual problem, and that there's a desire to see increased actions towards addressing some of these underlying social issues. People took the opportunity in this question to reiterate their concerns about feelings of safety and the perception of downtown not being safe. There's some suggestions on things that the city might do to address these concerns, looking at best practices from other municipalities who've struggled with these issues as well. One of the themes that was consistently expressed throughout the survey responses was that those experiencing homelessness are misusing our services and amenities and preventing the broader community from using them. And again, a lot of people expressed empathy for these vulnerable populations, and that stress that everyone has a right to be treated with dignity and respect. And then people also took the time to recognize and appreciate the opportunity that they had to provide input on this topic, and offered support and encouragement for the direction that the city is going. And so then finally, again, just looking at the fact that the question on the floor is about the benches. Just looking here at the breakdown of support for reinstatement of the benches based on the different questions in question 1. So here the dark green bar shows support or responses for downtown business owners, and the light green is the downtown property owners. Again, the percentages are roughly reflective of the overall totals. This is broken down by where people live. The light green is people who live in the downtown. The dark green is people who live outside of the downtown, but in Woodstock. The reasons people come downtown. So the dark green is working in the downtown. The light green is regularly shopping or downtown, or shopping in downtown. And then this was the final question about support for by people who work with vulnerable populations. And with that, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you for that. Questions of council? Counselor Tate.
Just through the chair, and thank you for that. It was very, a lot of work, a lot of information, and I just want, I already asked you this question, but so for the public's knowledge, I had some people comment, oh, well, some people could have commented like 10 and 15 times, and that wasn't the case, so can you just confirm that that did not happen?
Thanks through the chair. We did take into consideration, it was important because we wanted to make sure that we had broad perspective from the public and it didn't put restrictions that would limit people's ability to provide input into a decision that impacts them or a topic that impacts them. So we didn't want to put any restrictions in place by locking down IP addresses or using cookies to do that. However, we did take that into consideration and look at language patterns and response patterns and things like that. There were a couple of instances where there was instances that seemed like it might have been the same respondent more than once, but given the number of responses in total that we received, we do not believe that it impacts the overall outcome of the results.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I will remind everyone, this is our opportunity to talk about this survey. We will be, of course, making the vote later, but that's not going to have much to do. It's simply going to be if we're going to put the benches back or not. So this is your opportunity. Again, if you have any questions or comments on the survey. Councillor Leatherborough.
If I may, your worship, I just have a couple general comments about the survey and want to thank Colleen for all of her hard work. But I have pre-written them, so I didn't forget anything. So just an extended thank you to the manager of marketing communications for your hard work in producing the public survey, as well as your efforts to compile and share the results with the community. It was often asked that the public wanted to see kind of the raw data. So it is clear to me that seating in the core is and should be a separate conversation from how we plan to combat societal challenges that are impacting many in our community. I value that responses provided by everyone that participated in the survey. And I would like to give an extended thank you to the community partners for all that they do and for providing council with solutions on where to begin. The results from this additional community engagement will work as a strong tool as we head into the strategic planning workshop scheduled for March. I have read every comment once, if not twice, and as we work together to better the community for everyone, I would remind us all that language matters. Language is powerful and it is important we treat every resident in this community with dignity and integrity.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through the chair to, I'm not sure if this would go to the manager of communications and marketing, or it might be something directed towards the CAO or city clerk. Part of the comments in there and some of what we heard back from some of those that submitted correspondence was this city potentially either joining some of the local organizations. One of them was the Oxford Reducing Poverty Together, or potentially creating a new community poverty roundtable and having city representation. I would publicly like to say that I would be more than happy to be a person that was involved in that as a member of city council. I think that if anything from this survey that was put together, and again, an amazing job. I can't imagine how much work was putting this all together. So thank you very much for that. But I think that's something that's strikingly obvious is people want us to have more action and less talk. And I am more than happy to be a person that will be a part of city representation if something is either joining a current group or creating something on our own that works with city resources or other organizations within the county. I'm not sure if that's something that we're able to move forward with within this year, or if it has to be something that's developed later, but I think either having one of us on one of these groups or creating one with other community members is really crucial at this time.
Your worship, through to Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Certainly that is one possibility, but I would suggest that it might be beneficial for council to talk about the issue of the unhoused holistically during the strategic priority session, so that you can look at the big picture and you can look at all of the options before you and whether you know, the mayor should strike a task force or we should join other groups. I think it should be a bigger conversation and it's not something I think we can do justice to tonight, nor even during, you know, a budget presentation when we're focused on that.
Thank you for that.
If I can just add to that, I do agree. I think this is something we should look at as a council, part of the strategic plan. There's been a lot of discussions about that very same thing. So with those meetings coming up soon, I'm looking forward to that. Councillor Tate.
Yeah, just through the comments that we're getting, and I think part of the problem is that we're two-tier, and I think some people know accept that. So it's the upper tier that does the housing for the homeless and looks after the social aspects for the other councillors that weren't here before. Councillor Accioni or Mayor Accioni knows this, and Councillor Lauder and Schadenberg. There was a whole bunch of different discussion groups that kept going around in a circle and a circle and a circle, and nothing ever happened. We ended up with the shelter the way it is. It still has a long way to come, but it's a good start. Mayor Accioni can comment on this too. So we are actively trying to find another location for the shelter because it is out of room. But there are things that being done, but it's done at the upper tier. We can have more roundtables, but that was the problem the last time. We kept having roundtables and we have all these organizations and nobody was doing anything. So we almost have to have, I think right now, the big thing with, I think people need to understand with Sean Chapton running the shelter, he's a good facilitator with the other organizations. And if we can get more with this going out, if we can get more people aware what's going on and volunteering, people in the community volunteering and getting active, and maybe we'll get more results. Because what we're getting is politicians sitting around in a circle and nothing's getting done. I think we need more people from the public. And I think this was a very good start with that, and the public being aware that we do need more help, but we need people from the public buying into it too. So I think this was a great idea to do the survey, get people aware, but it is an upper tier responsibility and we are working on it. It's just, it takes time.
I'm just going to comment to that if I may. At the upper tier, of course, there is a lot of discussions for those that are watching. In fact, I'm very encouraged, may I say, what's going on right now at the county, recognizing the issue and with finances and everything being approved in their budget. So dignity and respect was a very common element with a lot of comments. So I think as a city, we have the city's support in the majority, at least, to be behind us, and we'll do what we can. And I do think there is opportunities like Councillor Wismer Van Meer that hoping the circle is going to come to a stop eventually, and now is the time, I think. But again, that's going to be a council decision. We'll do that during strategic planning. Councillor Wheaton.
Thank you for the opportunity, Your Worship. I want to thank the community for stepping up and responding. 1,557 responses is probably more than I ever anticipated. So thank you to the community. And I think we started out with one core question and ended up with a depth of information on so many other issues that I think helps us as a community, as a city, but also as a county. I have the privilege of sitting as the vice chair at Southwest Public Board of Health, and to learn the statistics and the information of the true depth of our opioid crisis in this region, and the actions, the mountains that we will have to move to make significant changes. But we collectively, I think, have the opportunity to make a positive change in our community. So thank you for all of your work in putting this together. I know there were a lot of moving targets. I appreciate the work that you put in. I will reiterate what Councillor Tate said, to maintain the integrity of the data was incredibly important to me, and clearly you put a lot of emphasis on that. So thank you very much. There is a wealth of information in here. For those who haven't taken the time to read through the comments once or twice, I would encourage you to, because there is there are some shocking comments, but there is a wealth of positive information in there and encouragement for us to continue forward.
Thank you for that. Any other questions of Ms. Collins before we let her go? Councillor Lauder.
It's not a question, it's a comment, and I want to thank you for for all of this work and that it showed that there's a need for more than just discussing about the benches and the survey. Certainly, the people are stressing the need for adequate services to help those in need. And I have no doubt we have to put our efforts into supporting operation sharing and the other organizations that are working with operation sharing. Sean has done a great job, and this 24/7 is now that we have that is wonderful for the people. So I think that we just have to keep moving forward and supporting things that's happening at the county, and hopefully someday that we can eliminate this. I know it's all happening all over the country, but hopefully that there will be a time that we can find some answers to helping this. So thank you very much for all the work you've done. Thank you. Thanks to the community for all their support and comments, whether we like them or not. It's the feeling of the community. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Then in closing, I just want to say thank you as well. I know the hours you put in, all senior staff and staff members have put in, but also to all the stakeholders here in the community. Those letters, there was a lot of thought that went into those letters that were put in. I know this started off as benches, and in my opinion, it's got really not much to do with benches in the long run. So thanks, everybody. Okay, thank you very much. No resolution is required as this item is dealt with under new business. So moving along, no mayor's report, council reports, and department reports. So now we'll go to 14C, 1 presentation of exhibition John Hartman. Many lives mark this place at the High Commission of Canada to the United Kingdom. I'm going to ask Miss Reed if she doesn't mind coming up. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of council. I'd like to acknowledge that Mariachione for taking time out of his busy schedule to join me and help launch the exhibition John Hartman, Many Lives Mark This Place at the High Commission of Canada to the United Kingdom in London, England. I greatly appreciate this, considering I know how busy things are, particularly at the start of a new council term and certainly within budget season. I'd also like to extend my sincere gratitude to Gabriel Arujo, who is a public programs officer at Canada House, for all his excellent assistance and efforts in mounting this exhibition. This was by far a career highlight for me personally. It was a tremendous honor and distinction to be selected to mount an exhibition at the Canada Gallery at the High Commission. As the report attests, Mariachione and I made several key contacts where we were in London, England, and in Woodstock, Oxfordshire, with the intent that we will spur on future economic, tourism, and cultural partnerships that will support the future growth of Woodstock, Ontario. I must say I'm particularly excited by what the future holds regarding the future partnership with the Oxfordshire Museum, which is located in Woodstock, England. I also want to take the opportunity to extend my thanks to the gallery's team for their excellent assistance with this ambitious project. They responded with their usual high degree of professionalism and agility to several frantic emails from me a few days and even hours leading up to the opening event. And they also kept the regular operations of the gallery humming along, which I was very appreciative of. And I do want to mention that this project would have not been made possible without the support of the Canada Council for the Arts, the Government of Canada, the Province of Ontario, the Nicholas Metivier Gallery, and an anonymous private donor. And it was really an amazing opportunity to showcase Woodstock on the international stage, and this really demonstrated the power of cultural diplomacy. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going to call for a motion on the floor before we go on. So I do looking for a motion. Councillor Lauder.
I'll move that Woodstock City Council receive the report regarding the presentation of the exhibition John Hartman, Many Lives Mark This Place at the High Commission of Canada to the United Kingdom from January 19th to April 1st, 2023 as information.
Looking for a seconder. Councillor Wismer Van Meer. Now discussion. Any questions for Ms. Reed, of course? Councillor Lauder.
I want to thank you Ms. Reed, for bringing this report forward. I think you have shown the importance of just one of our many artists whose works Woodstock Art Gallery owns. Thanks, Ms. Reed, for making this happen, obtaining the grants and the possible partnerships with economic development, tourism, cultural with UK that can form future growth in Woodstock. Thanks also to Mayor Accioni for accompanying you on the trip and making such important contacts. We're very proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I want to say a personal thank you. I was very proud to be there, and it was because of your hard work and your staff's hard work. To represent the city on such a high level was such a highlight of my young mayoral career. I couldn't explain it. To speak at Canada House, which is of course the Canadian Embassy, right in Trafalgar Square, was such an honor beyond belief. And I didn't count, I want to say probably good 9, 10 good contacts we made while we were there, with opportunities to sit down with economic development. Going into it, I wasn't sure what to expect, but coming out of it, let me tell you, hit it out of the park with a grand slam. That was fantastic. So again, bottom of my heart, thank you. And I believe the city of Woodstock would say thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
So thank you. All those looking for a motion, or sorry, looking for all those approvals, all those in favor? Emotions, eh? None opposed. Thank you. All right, nothing for Parks and Rec, Economic, Clerks, Chief Administrative Officer. Now we're going to 14G.1, Graphic Image Delivery Bylaw. Looking for a motion. Counselor Schattenberg.
I'll make a motion that Woodstock City Council refer the report regarding graphic image delivery bylaw to the bylaw section of the agenda, and further that City Council approves the short form wording and set fine submission as listed in Appendix A, and further that the City Council authorizes the Deputy Clerk to make the necessary application to the Ministry of Attorney General to seek approval for the proposed short form wording and set fines associated with bylaw number 9576-23, a bylaw to regulate the distribution of graphic flyers in the city of Woodstock, and also further that the bylaw be circulated to area municipalities in Oxford County for their consideration.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder, Counselor Leatherborough. Discussion? Sorry, did you have your hand up? Counselor Schattenberg? Sorry.
Yeah, I did have my head up for a discussion. I'm not sure if much discussion is necessarily needed on this, but I just wanted to sort of say that the idea would be to take anything that has a graphic imagery to be able to have it put inside an envelope, with the envelope saying there may be graphic images inside this envelope, and really goes along the same lines as the bylaw already passed in the city of London, and they've had some very good success with it in the past 9-10 months since they've approved it. So they're kind of in our bit of the benchmark for us to kind of watch to see how it has worked there. And in the bylaw, it mentions going through to be able to set fines and stuff for it, just to give people an idea. In the bylaw would be a bylaw infraction would be $350. And I'm sure that would be just for a first offense, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe the city clerk can clarify on that, but that's what the first infraction would be on a bylaw infraction.
Your worship, through to Councillor Schattenberg's question, yes, that's correct. The first fine would be $350. As we can see in the set fines, there's multiple fines depending on what the infraction is. They can be liable to an offense up to $5,000.
Any other comments or questions? No, I'd just like to say then that I want to thank staff for this. During the campaign, I'm sure I'm not the only one who are campaigning. This came up quite a bit. There was something going on at the time. A lot of people we spoke with were concerned about this. So I'm glad we moved this along so quickly, and thanks staff for that. Looking, all those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Thank you. Human Resources, Fire services, Woodstock Fire Department Service Delivery and Staffing Plan. Gonna ask for a motion while the chief is coming up. Counselor Tate,
I'll move that Woodstock City Council receive as information the fire department staffing plan, which recommends, subject to future budget review and approval, increasing the suppression division staffing to at least 52 firefighters in July 2023, and further increasing the suppression division staffing to at least 56 firefighters in July 2024, subject to increasing suppression division staffing to 52, increasing the suppression division minimum staffing from the current 8 to 9 persons upon all 4 firefighters being operational on shift in fire suppression, subject to increasing the suppression division staffing to 56, increasing the suppression division minimum staffing to 10 persons upon all 4 firefighters being operational on shift in fire suppression.
thank you. Looking for a seconder. Counselor Lauder. All right, chief, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, your worship and members of council. This is kind of a bit of an in-depth report that we've gone through. A lot of the information at the beginning when the background was provided for council, kind of some of the information about the fire service and the operations within what we handle. We are aware that we do have some new council members that are here. So I will take a bit of time to go through each of the things. I'm not going to read the report verbatim. We've been here for quite some time already, and I'm well known to be able to talk everybody's ear off if you let me. So with that, when we look at the background of what we're going through, underneath of the Fire Protection and Prevention Act, council sets a level of service for the municipality as to what we are able to offer to our citizens. And it's underneath of this that we've been operating for the past number of years. What we're looking for when we're coming forward is some rather significant changes as we're moving up. I do kind of want to lay a bit of the context as to why we're going this way. We have seen within the city that we some significant growth in the past while. I've been with the department since I was hired in '96, when we would be 6 firefighters at a minimum, and away we go in a much smaller community than what we are here now. Now, as council has been privy to in the past couple of meetings and also spoken to tonight, we are growing very quickly. We have seen some significant growth in our residential areas, as well as driving forces within all of our industrial and commercial too. So with that, when we start looking at it, our population base is greatly growing and increasing in size. With the people come houses and come additional challenges that we face within the fire service and the opportunities for us to be needed at them. We always hope we're the type of service that you don't want to have there, but you need to have us there for when it actually comes through. When we look at where we have been going through, again, with our planning reports, the building department regularly provides you with monthly reviews of building permits. We're able to see that in the past 10 years alone, we've had close to 4,000 new residential unit permits issued within the city. And when we look at future growth, looking at just a parcel of land that was the golf course on the North Shore, we have an additional 1,100 residential units planned for that development there that haven't even broken ground at this time. When we look at our responses within the areas of how we go through, I have provided some of the level data with respect to fire-based calls. Specifically, we are not going into the other type. Fire-based calls are where we're going to kind of have the seat of our discussions for here as we're dealing with our minimum staffing and what we need to have on. You do see that the totals, as we're looking at the growth from 2013 to the current 2022, we are seeing a growth in our fire-related type of calls. I do like to point out that when we do sometimes have things pushed back, well, false fire alarm calls, yes, we do see that they're on a rise. They do make up a portion of it. Pre-fire conditions, those that are overheating, things where a fire hasn't grabbed hold and there isn't visible flames, but we're in the conditions too. When we get the call out and my firefighters have that tone go off, we don't know what the nature of the call is going to be other than it being a fire call. So we plan, we pre-set up, the response is set as a fire call. The determination of what the actual call was is not made until after they've been on scene, after they've been able to assess it and make those tactical decisions at that time. So when we look at this for 2022, the 78 actual fire calls, 141 pre-fire condition calls, and the total of 291 calls that turned out to be false fire alarm related. The cumulative of that is what we are receiving, what we view as a fire call when we leave the station. Please keep that in mind when we're looking at the data with respect to incident response. Now, when we are looking at the type of response you are well aware we are a career department. There are multiple models that are available: a volunteer, full volunteer, a composite department, which is a mix of career and volunteer, and ourselves, which are everybody's at the hall full-time. It's the level of service that the county or the city has set for us. Our department, the division that we've got there, 4 shifts. At present, we have 12 firefighters in suppression per shift. We run a minimum of 8 staff, which allows us to have 2 people scheduled on leave and gives us a buffer of 2 people to be off for unscheduled leave due to illness, ailments, that type of thing. And we still able to maintain our minimum staffing that we go through. We have noted that when we review our sick leave and our WSIB time, that we are averaging underneath of our 10 that we like to have, what we're aiming for. Our average for the past number of years has been, when we look at it, is 9.67 staff daily is our average over the past 5 years. Now, this can fluctuate from day to day. I do like to point out that's the average. So we are at times where we don't go below the 8 because we'll fill it with overtime, but we may have staffing numbers of that scheduled shift that actually bring us below the 8 where we have to call in overtime to make sure that we've got that minimum there. Firefighters, with our sick time, you see the chart, it does start to spike with some of the times that we've got there. We're in a unique position with my staff on the fire suppression division. It's very specific. You have to be 100% to be able to do the job. Myself, I can have a sniffle, I can have a twisted ankle, I could have a broken arm. I am still able to come into the office and do my job. My firefighters don't have that capability to do that. If they are not at 100% or able to do 100% of the required jobs of a firefighter, they cannot be on the truck at that time. We are seeing that they're recognizing either they call in sick for an uncertified day or they're on a medically directed leave to be able to be off at that time. We are starting to see a growth in our sick times coming up. I think in some cases, this is for the recent time, it's a bit of the COVID relief coming to roost. And I have mentioned it in past meetings that we've had, the Fire Services Advisory Committee in the past we've had. Our crews did not have the opportunity of working from home in the fire service. They shouldered a lot of the weight of everything, of still having to be on duty, still having to respond. And I think in some cases that stress, that weight has come down to roost, and we're starting to see people taking their personal health, their personal ailments and that into attention. Unfortunately for us, that is increasing our sick time absences. With respect to the 2022 rate we can go into some of the numbers there. We do have a couple of members that we are off, that have been off on a long-term leave, either sporadic or for a continuous. And that does affect our numbers. One is a WSIB leave, one is a medically directed leave that hasn't been WSIB certified, but it does impact it. The downside for us too is it's officer positions that we have to maintain as well. So when an officer's off, we do have to fill it in. And if that shift doesn't have it available, we're calling overtime for it. I'm going to skip kind of through a little bit of what we've got. We do fill our time, as I mentioned, for our on-shift staff. We maintain the minimum of 8 with our overtime call. When we are at an incident, if we are in need of additional staff, we do have the availability to enact a callback system where available firefighters that are off duty can be requested to attend as support for the incident. Now, this can be either in a partial or a full. A partial is either we recognize one shift. A full is all available firefighters. This is a voluntary service. We do not have a mandated paid on call for the fire suppression. So we are aware that staff have lives outside of the 48 hours that they spend at the fire hall. And if they're able to attend, we do have some dedicated staff that are able to get through. But again, life gets in the way as well for that. The numbers that we look at, as we said, we're at the minimum of 8 overtime, or when we call in for the callback system, we do wind up pulling in on average at the present time anywhere from 8 to 12 firefighters. It does get us up. However, a callback is initiated after a scene assessment has been completed, when the officer has seen that it's an actual fire that we'll need the additional resources, and then we need the staff to come in. This can result in those staff not being on scene for another 10 to 20 minutes after we've arrived on site. So it's great to be able to have the additional resources, but as I'm kind of referencing with the report that we're going through with our staffing, we can't rely on that being our initial complement on scene for our first assessment. Fire growth within the area and why it's important for us to have a complement of staff on scene immediately upon it is the change of the makeup of both our construction, the designs, not necessarily the materials that are used on them. They do have some challenges there, but also the stuff that we put in it. There have been some significant testing done to show that our materials, the polycarb or the fuel load that we have in there with our, a lot of the urethanes, all these types of things, they burn hotter, they burn faster. This is getting the fire growth to increase in speed and also beyond the rooms of origin a lot quicker and a lot faster for us. This puts a greater risk on our firefighters as we're trying to not only suppress it, but also potentially address any rescue measures that we need to have. So by the increased risk there, this can, by arriving with minimum staffing, change the tactic of how our fire crews operate today that they would have when I started back 27 years ago when we had different construction, different types of materials. We have to evolve, and we may not be able to initiate an attack or an internal process as quickly as we'd like to if we had a higher complement or people that are on staff and available for us. I do make reference to a couple of studies that are available. I can provide the documentation if staff would like to go through them. We are providing this for you as information. The growth that we're looking at, I do make reference for our populations. We do have references there. It does come into play when we look at a standard that we try to, you see a number of departments look through in the municipalities. Number of career firefighters available per population standard there. We have seen our growth, as we said, we're fortunate 2021, a recent census putting us at 46,705 people and a marching order of where we're going from here. We have seen a big push for the increased density. There was a discussion earlier this evening, plain and simple, on high density construction that's going on, but also infill, where within our existing borders and our existing residences or residential neighborhoods, we're seeing the growth of multiple units with changes to legislation allowing now up to 3 units on what was formerly a single family home. That increases the challenges that we're going to be potentially facing, but also now with the infill, the additional challenges of having new residences or new buildings and being constructed in areas that were previously backyards and have some challenges of us being able to get to. When we make reference to a number of standards that we look at, the Office of the Fire Marshal and the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, tend to be the 2 leading areas that we go through. When we are addressing staffing, I do like to note that for the information that we have there, while we put it forward as these are recommendations, we also have to note that they are not requirements by the province. There have not been accepted or put forward of thou shalt. They are those, thou shall take these into consideration. I do like to impress upon it that while they are not a requirement, the fact that they are utilized as a best industry practice, they can be referenced at different times if things go south at different points. This came about when we were looking at some of our areas, and I'll reference later with respect to St. Thomas and some of the challenges that they had a number of years ago and how it led to changes to their minimum staffing. With the Woodstock Fire Department, we respond everybody to a fire-related call. Both of our stations, all available staff come out. We meet and exceed the minimum requirement standard for NFPA, which says that at least 50% of your complement must attend. When we are walking through our references on the report, we try to find communities that closely mirror what the city of Woodstock has. And what we've utilized is the three that are there, St. Thomas, Stratford, and Cornwall, have been recognized from different areas of involvement within the fire service for the city of Woodstock as comparables for us. We recognize they're not exactly the same. However, we try to get as close as we can. As we touch base, the minimum staffing that the city currently has is 8 firefighters on duty. While we have 12 on a shift, we average 9.6 at any time, and the least we'll have is 8. 8 does occur. The most common time is generally during our summer months is when we get into that. It becomes a challenge to fill the spaces, and we do have challenges of maintaining that. The Office of the Fire Marshal has a recommendation of having 10 firefighters on scene within 10 minutes at a working structure fire. We have an average response time here within the community of about 5 to 5.5 minutes to be able to have our 8 firefighters as a minimum staff with that. As referenced before, we can have our callback system for additional firefighters to come, but that's going to be an additional 10 to 20 minutes after the initial 5.5 minutes for our response. When we look at the staffing requirements or recommendations from the National Fire Protection Association, they bump it up even higher. And if we're looking at a single hose line going into a single family residential structure, they're pushing up to 14. This number I do like to kind of play out. It does go look at the staffing levels of where we're going to if we have a full complement on shift. When we look at our comparables, the 3 that we have brought into there for you to show, Stratford has a complement of 40 full-time firefighters, minimum staffing of 8. So fewer firefighters, same level of staffing. St. Thomas has the same level or same complement of suppression staff at 48 with a minimum staffing of 10. Cornwall has a minimum or a complement of 56 career firefighters with a minimum staffing of 10 as well. St. Thomas, though they're comparable with us, they have been at the minimum staffing of 10 since 2004 as a result of an inquest into the death of a firefighter, Dennis Redmond. And it was a recommendation from the inquest, and St. Thomas moved to that and have maintained it at that point. David, I think I've caught some of what you had. As I mentioned earlier, the staff to citizen ratio, you've got the recommendation or the references that we have there. When we compare and look at our comparables based on the career firefighters we have and the population, Woodstock sits at the highest of 1 firefighter for every 973 members of the population that we have, where the others average underneath of the 800, ranging from 831 with Stratford to 893 in St. Thomas. Our growth based both on projections from the recent census, but also from planning report that was issued in 2019 by Oxford County, shows that our population is on a very big upward swing, with the next population growth of our census calculated at 50,441, which would put us, if we look at it, today's population for our comparables well above everybody else. We are one of the top fastest growing populations in the area. When we are looking at the consideration of increasing our staff, and we do want to have this as a stepping, we are trying to take the responsible steps of recognizing that it is a strong financial impact to the community. If we could get away with it, we'd love to be able to hit our staffing levels that we want to have right off the hop, but moving in groups of 4 allows us to have 1 firefighter added per shift that we have within the fire suppression, ensuring that we have a level staffing on all shifts throughout the department. When we look at if we do move with a hiring of 4 firefighters, taking into consideration the budget approval process and the timing of such, and being able to go through the hiring process, it would be looking at a July 1st of 2023 start. And if we have that, the financial impact that we'd have is just over $46,000 per firefighter for wages and benefits, with a total of $185,000 roughly impact for the 2023 year. Now, these firefighters, again, moving forward into the 2024 year, where we would have 6 months of them at the probationary firefighter rate, and then a rate change on July 1st of 2024, plus contractual increases in wages and benefits moving to an impact with estimations on WSIB and benefit packages of just over $400,000 to the baseline. We have provided extended numbers there for council's perusal of these same 4 positions for the subsequent years after that as they move through the classification, with 2027 being the point where they reach the upper class of a firefighter, the rank of first class, and they would remain at that until such time as they're able to progress to become a full officer. When we look at additional costs for outfitting the staff, we are able to partially fund this through the developmental charges, because this growth requirement is tagged to the growth of the community. Therefore, it does fit into the available funding for developmental charges. It would be great if we could tuck a lot more of the $400,000 into that. However, we'll take it where we can get it. By increasing the staffing, but not changing the scheduled leave allotments that are out there, whereas, as I mentioned earlier, we allow to have 2 scheduled leaves per shift. Changes to impact our overtime, and that should be minimal. While we're moving up, we're still maintaining our buffer of 2 staff that need to be on. If we wind up with 13 staff on a shift with a minimum staffing of 9, 2 off and 2 as a buffer, we should pretty much see what we're looking at the present time. So kind of in a summary for you, with an overview, we do lay it at council's feet. Council sets the level of service of what the community has. These are the recommendations that I'm putting forward based on where we feel the community or the fire service for this community needs to move forward, and how we feel we can best provide a safe and effective service as this city continues to grow. By moving to the 4 firefighters for the 2023 year and requesting through budget consideration as well in the 2024 of an additional 4 to move us up to 14 on a shift at the end of 2024, that hits the magic number that NFPA 1710 was referencing for a fire response to a single family home. When we also look at the graduation of the minimum staffing clause with hiring process of a probationary firefighter in July of 2023, it's a 6-month process for them to go through their training and skills testing and assessment within the fire service. We do that in-house and with the crews that they'll be assigned to before they can count as a firefighter on shift. That's why we are looking at, once they're on shift and account as a firefighter, it'd be at that time we would like to move the minimum staffing up, so that we're not asking minimum staffing to be increased at the time of hire and suddenly we're having to make up that with an overtime costing at that point. That is a very brief overview. I would like to leave it some room for question if you have, and as we'll do so at this time.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Councillor Schoenberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to Chief Mr. Slager. I guess the best question to be asked would be, if you're using St. Thomas, Stratford, and Cornwall as comparables, what's the salary that they get paid based on the same sort of shift scheduling for a first class or an established firefighter versus what they get paid in Woodstock?
Your worship, through to Councillor Schadenberg. When we look at the wages, I don't have the schedule directly in front of me. I know with the city of Woodstock firefighters are on a current contract that will end at the end of 2024. St. Thomas, I believe, just had an arbitration award come down, but I don't believe they're in the same time frame. The wages that we're finding is we're still within the comparable. When we're dealing with negotiations with our firefighters, these comparators are also utilized at that same time. So we're not looking at departments that are either vastly over or vastly under. These are recognized departments that fall in line for among wage, but also benefit and other comparables within the contract. I can find that information and provide it for you and have it available at the time of budgetary meetings. So,
Councillor Wheaton.
Through the chair to the chief, I'm just curious, when you go out to post for applications for new recruits, are you finding them new to fire services, or are you finding people looking to move from within other fire services?
Your worship.
Are there people out there to hire? Are you going to be able to fill positions?
Your worship, through to Councillor Wheaton, we've seen a mix when we look through the applications. We've heard of challenges of within the city of trying to find suitable applicants to go through. I don't like to brag within the fires. We don't have that challenge. The last, when we were posting for a single position, I had over 700 applications that pre-qualified to get passed for us to be able to consider. We do have minimum requirements that you have to be certified under NFPA as a firefighter before you can apply. That allows us to know that the individual who's applying has the book knowledge that's there. We still test their skills, and that's on site. We have also seen some lateral moves from other departments. They do not come over with their current rank. If they are at a current fire department and they want to move to us, they start over as a probationary firefighter at the wage and benefits that are commensurate with that or line up with there. Of probably the last number of hirings that we've had, we've probably, I think we've split it maybe 2 and 2 that have had previous experience with the fire service, and 2 that have not had previous fire experience, but they've had some emergency service experience there. So there is the balance on all fronts.
If I may, that sounds like bragging, just throwing it out there.
We're kind of, we dealt with HR, and we hear it at the senior management meetings that it's very challenging with it.
700 to 1, I think, is bragging.
It makes
Just saying.
it makes it hard on us and management to have to
I can
read through that.
imagine.
It is very nice, that we have a great crop to be able to look through, and we do hope that we bring the best people into the city. So
Absolutely. No, that's a good thing. Any other questions for the chief? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through the mayor to Chief Slager, just, this is gonna be kind of a 2-part question, so just to make sure I'm understanding fully. So just looking at the comparatives, I would say Woodstock probably compares closest to Cornwall, except that our population rate is much, much higher than theirs as we grow from 2021. So I'm just wondering, what does, at this point with the budget, what would the minimum firefighter staffing per shift be? 8 is still what we're looking at with what you're proposing for this budget?
at present, so if things remain the same, we would be at 12 firefighters per shift and a minimum staffing at 8. If at the time of budget consideration that we did move to the hiring of the 4 firefighters for starting on July 1st, we would have the additional of the 4 firefighters, but our minimum staffing at that time would remain 8 until the 6-month window of where they have passed and they are considered a firefighter on shift. At that point, we would request that the minimum staffing move up to 9
Okay.
at that point.
I'm just, I guess, kind of additionally to that, I'm just wondering what it will take for us to potentially get us closer to that Cornwall number. Just, I look at the number and it's, I just, as a citizen and a community member, and a council member, I wonder for our community safety, seeing those numbers, just out of curiosity, what that would look like and what the impact might be budget wise and so on and so forth.
So if we look beyond the 2 levels that we've looked at here for the 2023 and 2024 budget, this focus was placed upon us achieving the ability of how can we get to the minimum of 10 minimum staffing on shift, and what we feel is the best feasible way for us to get to that. This does also fit into a larger plan of looking at the future growth within the community. Council is well aware when we're looking at the projections underneath the capital budgeting that there is discussion at a later council or at later meetings for a 3rd station. However, we can't march forward with the planning to that because that has not been approved. That can be adjusted regardless of when I've plugged it into the capital forecasting. Council sets that standard. It can be brought forward. It can be moved back. Projecting moving forward with additional staffing, we would be looking at trying to line up what we would need when we move to a 3rd station. What is the timing of when that 3rd station comes in, and what the staffing model would need to be to have for the community at that time. Information specific to those answers with that, I would be bringing forward with a report to address the moving forward with a 3rd station at the appropriate time, and to be able to lay that information out for the community.
Any other questions of the chief? All right, seeing none, Chief Slager, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Looking for, well, I guess all those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Thank you. Right, moving along. No public works or IT, special committees or notice of motions, but we do have a new business. And the following motion is on the floor, if everyone recalls, postponed from December 15th, 2022 council meeting. And I'm gonna read this out. Moved by Councillor Leatherborough, seconded by Councillor Wheaton. Whereas at the regular meeting of Woodstock City Council held on October 21st, 2021, council directed staff to remove the benches and picnic tables in the downtown area until further notice. And whereas to reinstate benches and picnic tables ensures Woodstock's downtown core be both accessible and inclusive to all members of our community. Now therefore be it resolved that Woodstock City Council directs staff to reinstate all such benches in Museum Square immediately and all remaining benches and picnic tables in the downtown area in the spring of 2023 following final snow removal activities. And there is a suggested amendment. Just start there, put that first. Okay. Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say, all right. I do need a mover for this motion and this motion only at this point. If you want the amendment. If anyone wants to put that amendment forward. Or have this discussion first. I love having her right beside me. That's great. Okay. Okay, well, I'm gonna ask Kate Leatherborough, or Kate, wow. Counselor Leatherborough, my apologies. If you'd like to discuss the motion on the
Yes,
floor.
it's just discussion at this point of the original motion.
Yes.
Yeah, so I fully support the motion that is on the floor to reinstate the benches for the various reasons that I shared back in December. I do think the consultation was great and we've collected that feedback and we're going to apply it strategically. So I do fully support reinstating the benches.
Thank you. The seconder? No, we already got that. Sorry. Any further discussion on that, on the motion right now? Hey, I'm new. Counselor Tate.
I have a question through, I think, to the CAO, so I'm gonna just assume that the motion passes. Is somebody gonna monitor once the benches come back, if we end up with the same issues that we had before? And if there's anything in place to address it if we do? So specifically, so the incidences that we had with the needles and people trying to do damage to our buildings, attacking some of the homeless people. The problems in the stairway with people using it as a
Point of
washroom.
order. We're just talking about the benches, are we not?
That is correct. So my question
Yeah.
is, if the benches go back, who is going to monitor the benches?
But that, I don't see any of the monitoring through your chair, sorry, through the chair. I don't see any of the language referring to monitoring or safety.
Point of order, that is my question on the motion. Who's going to monitor? Because it's not in the motion. So my question to staff is, if it's going to be monitored, if the benches go back.
Yes, I will allow that. That is a fair question. If the CEO doesn't mind answering that.
Your worship, through to Councillor Tate, we won't do anything any differently than what we do now without the benches, whether the benches are there or not. We have security guards. Security guards maintain reports, activity reports. Staff, if they experience an incident, they file incident reports, whether the benches are there or not. We maintain records of the amount of sharps that are recovered from the various disposal units, as well as when they're not in the disposal units. So that kind of data is tracked regardless.
So just further to the motion, I think I commented on this before, the benches on the main street were always to come back. So I just also want to ask a question. So some of the businesses do not want them in front of their businesses. do they have a choice of where the benches go downtown? Because some businesses do not want them placed in front of their place of business. Is that possible?
That's through the CIO, I assume. Counselor Tate?
Your worship, Councillor Tate, there have been occasions where there have been benches removed as a result of a frequency of use causing disruptions to adjacent businesses, but if you're a business in the downtown, you have a voice through the BIA, and the BIA, we'd encourage them to work through the BIA and engage with staff in that way.
So just my final comment is I won't be supporting the motion for the same reasons I said before. It's unfortunate that the narrative was directed at the homeless because that's not what it was for. And from all the work that was done, I appreciate the information that came back, but it was pretty clear the police and numerous other experts suggested not putting them back at this time, as we still haven't addressed what the real issue is. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Any other discussion? Counselor Lauder?
Thank you. I also will not be supporting the motion, but I certainly support the benches coming back on the streets as was planned in the October 21 resolution that they would be coming back. At this time, I do not support benches being installed in the museum square. I've read the reports from city staff and the police department, and I have a duty to keeping our employees safe and in a safe environment to work in. So, and for those reasons, I am not supporting in the museum square. I certainly support the ones on the street.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Are we having an amendment added to this motion? I guess would be my question. If not, then I will call a question. We'll call a vote. All those in favor of reinstating the benches in the spring of 2023, following final snow removal activities, is the motion on the floor. No. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Yes, I read the last line. My apologies. Immediately for the museum square. My apologies, everyone. Without any other amendments. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? 4-3, motion carried. Thank you. Now draft bylaws. Counselor Wheaton.
Thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Tate that the following bylaws be given a first and second reading. 9576-23, a bylaw to regulate the distribution of graphic flyers in the city of Woodstock. 9577-23, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended. 9578-23, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended. And 979579-23, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8626-10 as amended. Questions on that? None, all those in favor? None opposed? Councilor Wheaton. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Tate that the following bylaws be given a third and final reading. 9576-23. 9577-23, 9578-23, and 9579-23.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? None opposed. Carried. Thank you. And that is the meeting. Questions of council, and today we're actually going to start with Councillor Schattenberg.
Thanks a lot. First of all, I want to remind everyone that this is the 75th anniversary of the Woodstock Museum. downtown. Of course, we had a very successful tea opening there to mark the 75th birthday, and many of council attended it. I just want to let everyone know that with Family Day arriving on Monday, February the 20th, we're debuting 2 new exhibits at the museum. I'm on the museum advisory committee, so both of them are very interesting and very exciting indeed. One being the exhibit of Sikhs in Canada is one that opens up, and so is COVID stories. And what's interesting with the COVID stories, of course, is curator Karen Houston was asking people all the way throughout COVID to be able to maybe start maintaining some stories or some ideas as to how they went through the COVID time. So it might be something where you think, well, why is the museum looking at COVID stories now? But this would be something that'd be interesting to take a look at again 100 years from now and 150 years from now to see how society changed and coped, just as we did through other various pandemics in years past, including back like 1918 and that time. Just want to remind everyone also with Family Day that the Woodstock Navy Vets will play on Monday afternoon at 1:45 against Wellesley. That's one of the top teams in their division. And they also play on Friday night, that's tomorrow, against the Norwich Merchants at 7:45. So they have 2 home games this weekend. And here's an event that maybe the mayor was going to mention anyway, but I'll mention it first. And that's the Polar Plunge that the Woodstock Police Services will be operating to help raise money for the law enforcement torch run, which, as we all know, is in support of the Woodstock Special Olympics program. And the Polar Plunge this year, polarplunge.ca/Woodstock, if you want to sponsor anybody on it, is Wednesday, March the 8th at noon time. So basically noon to about 2 p.m. at Fanshawe College on Finkel Street. And I'm sure Jerry will be the first one to jump in, or maybe the second one after our police chief jumps into the cold water.
Calling you out first tonight, Counselor. We're gonna go zigzag. Counselor Wheaton.
Thank you, Mayor Cioni. Following up on Councillor Schadenberger's COVID stories, I mentioned that I have the opportunity to sit on the Board of Public Health, and we were reminded at this most recent meeting that it was 3 years ago, right around this time, that the World Health Organization declared COVID to be an issue of concern. And approximately 2 years ago that the first mass immunization clinic was opened here in Woodstock, but also throughout St. Thomas and then in Tillsonburg. Now, 3 years after the pandemic started, the mass immunization clinics will discontinue as effective tomorrow. But vaccinations are still available, just not by walk-in as we've had it. You can still go to ontario.ca book-vaccine to book an appointment for any subsequent boosters. And I also wanted to mention so it's kind of the COVID story. It gives me heart palpitations talking about the last 3 years because it has taken up such a mass amount of our time and energy. So I will make a submission to the museum on that. Southwest Public Health is also going to be conducting a feasibility study for consumption and treatment services. As we've heard throughout the survey tonight, we have much bigger issues that we are looking at in our community collective. And so I encourage people to follow Southwest Public Health on social media to stay tuned on when that survey will be launched. I appreciate that our community, 1,557 people stepped up to fill our survey. I hope that this many people will also step forward to help us identify and address what treatment services are feasible in our community, because that feedback, especially from people with lived experiences, will be critical in how we implement services moving forward.
Thank you. Counselor Wismer Van Meer.
I'll keep it short. It's been a long meeting already. So just a reminder that Theatre Woodstock opens Guys and Dolls, the concert version, tomorrow night. I know when we arrived, we thought, oh my goodness, there's a lot of people here tonight, but they were doing their final run through and dress rehearsal full run through. So I know they're very excited about this production. We also have Huron Park. They're doing their production as well that starts next week. So get out and support them. It's the first time they've done a production in over 10 years. I think it might be more than that. So theater is alive and well in our community. So get out there and support the arts. And don't forget Family Day events, a creative program in Woodstock by the Kingsman Group that are supporting that. There's shuttle buses, lots of activities happening all throughout Woodstock. If you haven't had a chance, just go to the Family Day. You can just Google Family Day 2023 City of Woodstock. Takes you right to the page. Lots of great things that are taking place here in Woodstock that are great for your family, whether you go with a group of friends or some other neighbors, that'd be great to get out and enjoy this weekend. Thanks to those that made that possible.
Thank you. Counselor Lauder.
Actually, most of it has been said, but I will just remind everyone that the gallery is open and ready for people to come in on Family Day. So, the free public transit has been said, the shuttle bus will also be provided to and from all locations from 9 a.m. to 5. And please see the City of Woodstock website events page for all the details. And just everyone get out and enjoy their family on Family Day, and that there's so many activities going on throughout the city. So just enjoy, have a great weekend, and hopefully we don't get the freezing rain that they're promising.
Thank you. Counselor Tate.
Just a reminder again about the coldest night. We're only halfway to the goal and it's coming up. So big push from everybody. Hopefully some of the industries in town will give it a push. And I want to congratulate Connie Lauder's granddaughter. Connie's had such a bad year. It was nice to have some good news. Her granddaughter got engaged. So I'm very happy for the Lauder family to have some good news. And just on that note, if our reps on the hospital board, Councillor Accioni and Councillor Lauder, my father just had an extended stay and the care was amazing. The staff was really good. I can't say enough about them. The emergency room was fantastic. And you really learn about your community when you go through something. I have to, a personal thank you to Joanne and Gord Penny from Penny Pinchers. They don't know my father, but they text me with any help possible. And I've had a number of people reach out to me, taking time out of their busy day just to ask. So thank you very much. My dad will be out of commission for quite a while. So the good news is eventually he will get better. The bad news is Tim Hortons is going to be without a very regular customer. So some of their revenue may be down for the next little while. And be careful because it is icy out.
I'm glad he's doing better. And last but certainly not least, Councillor Leatherborough.
Yep, so Family Day is obviously on the horizon, an extended long weekend, but I also want to make mention this Saturday, I'll be heading to Ingersoll Library, Saturday, February 18th from 1 to 3 p.m. Dwayne Kumla Thompson, also known as DKT, in recognition of Black History Month, meet Oxford County artist and previous candidate in Woodstock's municipal election. Dwayne will be present with his art installation, recognizing significant dates in Ingersoll's history. So if you are looking for a little drive down to Ingersoll, that's where I'll be, and looking forward to learning more. Happy Family Day.
Great, thank you. And going last really does not much fun to talk about. So I will say, remind everybody about the revenue budgets, of course, next week. We've usually always got lots of seats available starting at 5 o'clock, Tuesday and Thursday. Come on out, see how your money is being proposed to be spent, of course, as a city. Happy Family Day from my family to yours, of course, on Monday. And coldest night of the year, we do have 9 days left, I might add, on Councillor Tate's comments. Please be generous. If you're not able to participate, please donate to somebody that is. It is a big need. I think we talked about that enough tonight. But recognizing the community does agree that there is a big need, so please dig deep. This is their #1 fundraising for the year. This is the big one for them. So they do need your support. And with that, I'm going to ask for an adjournment. Councillor Wheaton, seconded by Councillor Lauder. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.